this session will be chaired by Frederik Zulheid. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. He's a project coordinator at GIS, the German corporation. Without further ado, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. Frederik Zulheid is my name, and I'm happy to announce and moderate a meeting on Devil's Claw, to be more specific about Devil's Claw sustainable supply chain from Namibia and a new standard called GACP Plus Standard that is being launched here today. And let me first of all walk you through the agenda. First of all, we will have some introduction by Mr. Karim Azais from BMZ, who will speak about the BioInnovation Africa Project that has initiated this initiative and why this is relevant for BMZ, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Then we will hear from Mr. Christian Pierrot from Naturex, a part of Givaudan, about industry expectations and ambitions. Then there will be some more detailed presentation by Gero Diekmann from Namibia, representing the Namibian Devil's Claw Export Association Trust, about how the standard was developed, the consultation process, and where we are now. And then there will be Laetitia Veuillemeno, who will talk on behalf of Givaudan Foundation on how to empower Devil's Claw communities as a social project. Afterwards, there will be some short Q&A session. Before then, handing over the developed standards to the representative of the Namibian mission to the United Nations, Mrs. Hungileni Chitundu. Thank you very much. So without further ado, let me go through some very short slides about describing what Devil's Claw is, because you may scratch your head what it is. There are two different species. They are dried and cut in tubers and used to produce extracts for joint health, occurring naturally in Namibia, but also elsewhere, harvested by around 12,000 harvesters. And Namibia is the biggest exporter. But at the same time, the resource is under pressure. As you can see from this illustration, it does not only occur in Namibia, but it circumvenes Botswana. And these are some two beautiful images of the different species. The project has been or is being managed by different project partners. There is, at the one hand side, NANCi, the Namibian network of the cosmetics industry, not represented here today, coordinating the activities, a number of local experts. And on the other hand, there is BMZ that is funding the partnership and the initiative under the BioInnovation Africa Project. There is GIZ as the executing agency, the Namibian Devil's Claw Export Association Trust providing orientation and initiating the project, as well as Naturex as part of Givaudan that has also initiated this project and providing orientation from industry perspective in terms of compliance in particular, as well as the Givaudan Foundation, which sponsors and supports environmental and social projects. And without further ado, I would now like to hand over to Mr. Karim Azais to talk about BioInnovation and BMZ. Thank you.
Thanks, Friedrich. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. Also, yeah, was ich nicht. So I'll just give a brief introduction, not too long, so we can have plenty of time for discussions later on. So why am I here today? Why is the BMZ, the Federal German Ministry, funding this project via GIZ? First of all, Africa is, as you know, home to abundant biodiversity, with a lot of species and plants, an uncounted number of animals and microorganisms. Traditional uses and knowledge is relevant for innovation and the creation of added value in a lot of fields and appliances. And also, biodiversity and traditional knowledge are source for innovation and economic development all over the continent. So BioInnovation Africa is supporting African and European private sector actors in developing mutual beneficial business partnerships, really on an eye-to-eye level, and this all in a framework of high ethical, social, and environmental standards. And currently, the project is, as you can see here, on the red-colored countries in Cameroon, Madagascar, South Africa, and Namibia, which is the focus today. And this project actually, well, let's say, partners of this project benefit in a couple of fields. First of all, the project supports the regulatory compliance, also the ecological sustainability. It is a driver for innovation and for new products and jobs in our partner countries. And also it acts as a political advocacy that is, it's a showcase, or it can showcase actually successful, sustainable North-South business partnerships as proof of principle, but also South-South business partnerships. And it's also very important to integrate biotrade and ABS in corporation portfolios. And the project BioInnovation Africa also contributes to the objectives of the BMZ. It motivates the private sector to contribute to 3 objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity. That is very important: conservation, sustainable use, and the equitable sharing of benefits, which is a topic that has been neglected too far in the past, in general terms. And also, it's a showcase for an encouragement and support of the private sector to invest in African countries, or to go into partnerships with the private sector of African countries, for our partner countries. And with that, also, it establishes long-term partnerships with our partner countries and partner, or let's say, between companies from Europe and from African countries, and in order to establish resilient supply chains. Oops, and that's the last slide, I guess.
Yes, this is just an illustration of the biotrade principles. We can easily skip that. It's just a good transition to now. Thank you very much, Mr. Karim Azaïs, for the presentation.
Thank you, Friedrich.
And I would like to hand over now to Christian Pierrot on industry perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Friedrich. And I will explain why this project is important for the industry, using Devil's Claw tubers, and why Naturex, part of Givaudan, was one of the initiators of this project. And to start with, that's because industry has a strong commitment for sustainability. At Givaudan, we have the ambition for 2030 to source all our products in a way that protects the people and the environment. And basically, that's Givaudan's position and strong commitment, but also there is a similar positioning from other actors of the industry using Devil's Claw and other wild herbs, as soon as these industries have ESG initiatives. The industry as well, committed to sustainability, at some point is also willing to support financially this ambition for sustainable gathering of wild plants. But yeah, we will need to invest to implement these initiatives, but it needs to be financed by the whole supply chain, by all the industries importing Devil's Claw, but also having the commitment from all the exporters working with Devil's Claw. And what is required as well is that the impact is made on the long term. So we need the support of the local institutions and the local policies to help this to happen. And what are the expectations from the industry apart from sustainability? That's of course compliance, but that goes beyond that. We need traceability, sustainability, and good practices to ensure that the business we make with these wild plants is ensured for the long term, but also we need not only the sustainable practices, but also work on the quality of the dried roots. We know the regulations are more and more strict on the quality, on the contaminants, and so such project will also help to ensure we follow the good practices for harvest, also for post-harvest practices, and improve the quality overall. And to make sure that this happens, we will also need to ensure that there is a resource assessment to measure the impact of this initiative. And to do that, again, what do we need to implement locally? First, a clear governance is needed in Namibia and also coordinated with the importers. And we also need a local engagement to make this happen. The good level of conformity, and we need checks to make sure that this is working on the ground of Namibia. That will be held by a mandate given to an organization to ensure the effective implementation, but also the compliance with local routes, like ABS. Namibia is now setting an ABS regulation which is access to benefit sharing, to share the value of the products that are exported and with added value sold in European countries or Western countries. So we'll make sure that the local organizations check that this is effectively done and that the benefits of this supply chain are shared. And we really hope that this project will help giving an internationally recognized level of compliance. This GACP that we will present you is really aiming at being internationally recognized now for Devil's Claw, and that will also help illustrate that can be done also on other supply chains of wild materials in the future. So now to set the scene of why it was important to have such a project, I will briefly show the concerns on the resources. So as you can see on the picture, that's a wild root that is harvested manually in the bush of Namibia, and some of the current practices must be reviewed. So why? First, because there is a strong demand and that requires a long-term management. There is no cultivation, but there is a sustained high demand for export with an increasing trend. This brings, of course, due to the fact that it's really a cash activity for the communities, locally you can have some over-harvesting and unsustainable harvest practices. So either harvest of secondary roots, but also the tap roots, the main root that is not, if harvested, cannot replenish the resource, and also punctual overexploitation. That's mainly due to poverty and low level of education, right? So to show that there is a concern, anyway, this species, Harpagophytum zeri, has been placed by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry and Tourism in Namibia on the protected species list. So there is a concern on the availability. However, we will also show that there are already some good practices happening, and about 1/4 of the production is already sustainably managed. But we must go much beyond that. So as you can see, as it is manually harvested, you have to dig out holes to collect the secondary roots, and unsustainable practices are linked to the fact that the holes are not recovered or refilled. That would allow the main root to regrow the plant and be harvested again in a few years. So that's typical examples of unsustainable harvest management. And also post-harvest practices, where in some cases there are damaged roots that can jeopardize the quality of the roots, and also inappropriate post-harvest handling with improper storage or improper slicing and drying. As we can see here, the drying is a very important part to manage the microbiological contamination of the dried roots. And so when it's badly done, the value of the product is also reduced, because the quality is not up to the standard of the industry. The storage, as well, as you can see on the picture, is not properly handled to avoid cross-contamination and ensure good quality. However, as I was saying, good practices already exist, and that's what we want to promote on a much larger level. First, filling the holes after collection is the basic principle to ensure the renewal of the resource. Then the drying activity, the slicing first and drying activity must be done on nets and not on the ground to ensure good quality, especially on microbiology. And how can this be done? Through trainings, of course, of the harvesters, of the traders, of the post-harvest handlers. And we can see on the last pictures that when a proper storage is handled, okay, you here as well can ensure good traceability, good quality of the roots, and that's responding to the European standards of the importers requiring good quality material. So to show how this is done, then we'll go to the next piece.
Yes, thank you very much, Christian Pierrot, about this perspective, and I hope we have aroused enough attention or curiosities to hear more about how the standard was developed. So therefore, Gero Diekmann, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's quite a big event for myself. I'm a Namibian citizen, and I'm one of the exporters. I'm standing here in my capacity as a representative of the Namibian Devil's Claw Exporters Association. So this is a decision that all the exporters of Namibia have taken to support the GACP standard, and the plus, of course, which we will come back to later on. Why is it important for us to develop the GACP Plus standard? Namibia is the country that produces most of the Devil's Claw. And it is our ambition that we can assure the industry that there will always be sufficient and enough of the resource available. So Namibia wants to be proud of being the leader in the market, and we want to, of course, maintain our market share. We want to, as Namibians, provide the market with a high-quality product. We want to be proud of our product, and this must be recognized by the industry. We cannot afford to have contamination with aflatoxins, microbiology contamination, and all these things. So we have to work very hard to eliminate those things. And we have to start at the harvester level. As you have seen from some pictures of the previous speaker, that there is a lack of awareness with many of the harvesters, and we need to address that. And we do that through training and education. We also need to have more stringent quality control points so that bad quality cannot enter the market. And we must be careful that we are not driven too much by quantities, but that we also have to look at the quality that we are producing. And we have to, the harvester, look after the harvester that he gets a fair price for the product, because that is a very important ingredient for him to be motivated to harvest sustainably. From us exporters, it's always expected by our European customers with CSR policies and so on, that we comply to all those regulations that they have set up within their company. And of course we want to do that. And the standard helps us to be compliant in most of those points. So again, we want to stand for quality and reliable supply. So we also monitoring of the resource base becomes a very important ingredient of our standard, so that we see if we are on track or not. How do we ensure that the GACP Plus standard really takes over and becomes the normal of the day and not the exception? This is our big challenge. So training and education is one of the main pillars that we build the standard on. And we will come back to that a bit later. Of course, once we have developed this, the standard is already developed. It is ready to be handed over. But now we need to also find the right system that manages the standard and that keeps and maintains the quality of the standard and the integrity of the standard. That is also our role as the Namibian Exporters Association, to have a look on the standard and see that the integrity of the standard is maintained. Of course, we expect once we are able to deliver a much better quality to the market, we also expect that the pricing goes along. When we hope that through that commercial contracts will be signed, that will be a proof that the project is working well. So GACP, in short, stands for Good Agricultural and Collection Practices. I think most of you know that. We have used the EMEA and the WHO guidelines for the GACP standard, for the Namibian GACP standard. And we took most of the things, covered most of the points mentioned in those guidelines. So that is, of course, applicable to the cultivation as well, which for now does not play a role for Devil's Claw, but could well become an important matter in the future. Of course, one of our main aspects must be the sustainability, must be sustainable harvesting. We cannot afford to eradicate the plant. So many people make a living from Devil's Claw, and we must maintain that. In many cases, it's the only source of income that these people have, and we really have to work hard to maintain that. So I think it's from self-speaking that quality, of course, is an ingredient of the standard, and that this, of course, traceability will play an important role to prove compliance to the standard. Now, we call it the GACP Plus standard. What does the plus stand for? Namibia has just ratified the ABS legislation in last year, and we have 1 year to become compliant to that legislation. So access and benefit sharing will play a very important role. We don't know yet how it's affecting the devil's claw trade, since a bio trade, but there are already a lot number of discussions ongoing with the government to get clarity on where devil's claw stands. So we also need to determine who are the right holders. So what this will bring about, that people who are in control of the resource will also benefit more from it. Which does not only be through financial means, but it can also be in other ways, in support of training or infrastructure. Any other projects could be part of that. So the aim of the standard, of course, is user safety. At the end of the day, that our importers know that the product can be safely used, and that is achieved through appropriate quality standards. Of course, again, sustainability is a very big component of the standard, and of course the socio-economic welfare. You cannot imagine the amount of cash that is injected into a village when there is a buying event, and how that impacts the microeconomy of that village. So the standard, just briefly, is built up on 8 non-negotiable principles. They are underlined by 18 criteria, for which we use 69 indicators, which need to be complied with, or which are going to be checked. Then each indicator will also be verified, needs to be verified with some kind of proof. And of course, there is guidance throughout the standard that it's easy for people to understand and to be compliant with the standard, which also explains each and every point. So the non-negotiable principles are, of course, legislation, of which ABS will now also play an important part. The human rights issues need to be addressed in the standard. Of course, buildings and facilities compliance, also with equipment and machinery. The harvest, the way of harvesting, which is very important, that harvesting is done in a sustainable way. The processing of the product, so that it's processed in such a way that the quality is very high, with very little or no contamination at all. Of course, in any standard, documentation and proof of the standard is absolutely essential. And of course, if there are deviations from the standard, there must be a plan on how to correct those actions. So training is a very important component of the standard development. We've already, I think you will also talk about that a bit later. And there will be about 70 champions have been trained already in Namibia. So they are ready to go and train other people in the villages and register them. So that's, and it's how it's perceived by people, the thirstiness for knowledge. And it's really amazing how they come forth and want to learn more and are willing to learn more. So just, maybe I just run over it very quickly. The way is the material is being presented, then a theoretical test is written, Thereafter, of course, also needs to be a practical session, which is going to be in the bush, close to the village, that people see how the plant looks like, how it needs to be harvested. And of course, it's again accompanied with a test. Then there's a manual which can be used as a guideline that will be widely distributed. SOPs will be set up with manuals that go supporting documents with it. Of course, registration is very important because that's the proof of what has been done. And through infographics and videos, further teaching material will be available to many harvesters. On the right-hand side, you just see the contents of the training manual, which is quite comprehensive, to cover all the aspects of the standard. So, first of all, to the left-hand side, theory it's been taught, then the test needs to be passed with 80%. You can only become a Devil's Claw champion if you pass the test with 80%. Then there's also practical training, and there's also another test required there, which needs to be passed by 90%. And it's only after that these people are then qualified as champions and they are registered as champions. Of course, it's very important that there is a register of the champions, but there will also be a register of whom the champions give training to. So that will all be part of the databases to manage the standard effectively. So all the buyers and exporters have access to that information and can make use of those champions. I'm done with my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pierrot Diekmann, for the presentation. And maybe now you have a more deeper insight between when you say this or that standard, how much detailed work is behind it to develop it, and the unprecedented case of also making it a plus to include ABS compliance. With that, I would like to hand over to Laetitia Veillet-Menot to speak about Givaudan Foundation's engagement in this context. Thank you.
Thank you. But you said everything. Now I try to give another perspective of an additional partner to the program. So thank you for being here and hear this work being done, huge work being done on the GACP Plus standard. I will present you quickly the Givaudan Foundation. So as you see in the name, the Givaudan Foundation was created by Givaudan Company with the objective to support the community where Givaudan is sourcing natural ingredients, like Devil's Claw, but also initiative proposed by Givaudan employees. We have in the room here one of the employees who proposed a project to the foundation, but I'm going to talk today more about support to natural ingredient sourcing countries. And the area of intervention of the Givaudan Foundation are support to education, health, and environment preservation. And you might have understood that in this program, there are all those three elements which are covered for Devil's Claw. So we, at the foundation, we decided to contribute to the program. All our initiatives, we work hand in hand with Givaudan colleagues who provide their expertise and their local knowledge and local connection with partners and suppliers. We are a non-for-profit, and we've decided for this program, one, to support the training, to making sure that the standard can be applied on the ground. And the second initiative that we are contributing to is to provide the women, the working mothers, daycare solutions for the little children. So on the first one, so we contributed to the training of the collecting communities, and as Gero said, what have been achieved so far, we had 72 champions that have been trained from 30 communities, and the next steps is for them to train their community. On the second initiative, the daycare for the little children, so with the local partner and with the team, they've identified the most relevant villages to establish the daycare center. Maybe we not mentioned earlier, but the majority of the harvester of Devil's Claw are women. So we found it very relevant to support this activity. And so far, so we've identified the village, and the next step will be to establish the daycare in close collaboration with the villager, which are well engaged already in making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was brief and concise and is completing the image of all the work done. Actually, I don't need this. You can keep it.
Yeah.
Should I have questions, and there will be. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to open the Q&A session, and possibly to break the ice, let me just start with a general question. With all this endeavor you went through, either to Naturex or also the experiences from Namibia directly, I leave it to you to answer it. What do you think are the success factors that made it possible to really come to the point where we are right now? Maybe you can name a few. Pierrot.
Yeah, thank you. That's an important question, and it's already through the training of the 72. There was actually over 90 people who received the training, and we can see already that that quality is changing drastically, and it's well known, and people want to learn, and they want to go for a better standard. They also want to be proud of their product, and we will want to enhance this, and this is really great to see. That's the one thing. The other thing is, I think, just this, to have this launch here, it's great. Thank you, Givaudan, Christian, for this opportunity that you have created to make the standard well known to the industry. That is a very, very important, that's a very crucial point as well, because if we have a standard nobody knows about it, it's not going to help anything. So we hope that this is going to be a tremendous success, and that industry is going to demand that standard more and more, and is also willing to pay for it. I think these are the two main. Then the awareness, level of awareness that we have achieved already with our government in terms of Devil's Claw, and how important that resource is for our country is tremendous. And I think also for us exporters to be more aware that we need to adhere to sustainable practices and really make our traders aware about those practices. So there's a lot of positive things that we can report on already.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe if you want to complement that, and especially in view of the fact that industry is listening, and it's not only about Devil's Claw, but about what are the learnings for other cases? So in terms of success factors, maybe you can name a few. Thank you.
Yes. So as Gero said, the first achievement is really to have a joint collaboration with the same ambition from the exporters as well as the industry. That's crucial, that we are aligned on the final expectations and that on the way to achieve it. So that's the first important point. And the second is that, we have people on the ground that can make it happen with the exporters, but not only, with NGOs that have been embarked in this journey and that approve the way we move it forward, as well as now the government who's gonna take it over and make it happen and make it as a general rule for the future harvesting practices, right? So that's the main first point. And that shows that with engagement of the different layers of the supply chain, you can achieve it. Even being in Namibia, that shows that you can do it also in other countries, as long as you have a strong commitment from the locals as well as from the industry behind, and that should ensure the long-term sustainability of the wild products. We really aim to be an example for the next supply chains, being from Africa, but also in Europe or Asia or Latin America going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, although I have other questions to the plenary, I would like to open this discussion to the audience and to raise any kind of questions. And I see that there's not enough level of shyness, so we can go right away. Maybe you could also introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ulrich Feiter, Parseval Pharmaceuticals from South Africa, and also sometimes working a little bit with the Devil's Claw and other natural resources. My question to the panel is, why create a new standard, the GAC Plus, and not use existing standards like Fair Wild or Fair Trade, UEBT standards, etc.? What triggered this move and not use existing institutions and standards? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone who would like to volunteer to answer this question? Yeah? Okay. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Uli, for that question. It's maybe a very good question, but we thought that it's really targeted on Devil's Claw. Firstly, that's a product relevance that we are focusing on, and that, of course, we were using WHO and the EMEA standards for GACP as those guidelines as what you call it, a we copied most of our used that as groundwork for our standard, and we just felt that it's important that we Namibianize the standard, that we make it a local standard that we want to be proud of.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that we did not want to push for a certification. We want a guideline, a standard to be applied and applicable for the whole supply chain without being mandatory to be certified, because certification is a cost. Certification will never be followed by all the communities, so we really didn't want to push it as a new certificate, adding a level of complexity because of certification audits, etc. So that was the goal. After that, the GACP in itself, as Gero said, is mostly taking the main lines of the existing GACP, but more adapted to this supply chain in particular.
Okay, thank you, Christian. While there are also questions online, we have to mix. So let me, for diversity reasons, start with raising some of the questions that were posed online by some online virtual participants, and then I come to you, if that's fine for you. That's to Christian Pierrot. Actually, two questions. I'd like to combine them. The first one is, and I don't know who wrote this, how can we guarantee the concentration of interest according to the different raw materials, in brackets, Devil's Claw, in order to guarantee the quality? That's the first question. And the second one, what major incentives are invested in promoting value enhancement for harvesters to assure the sustainable harvest? I mean, anyone can volunteer to answer if they have something to say. So it's not necessarily only addressed to you.
So I hope I got the point right. But first, on the quality, we are already working closely with the exporters to ensure that we have the same quality standards first, and that we apply the same testing techniques, and that we share upfront our quality expectations, so that the exporters can mandate the harvesters and eventual intermediates to work, to adapt their practices to reach our standards. So if I got the first point, that's the way we work it. And I don't know, Pierrot, if you want to add something.
Yes, at the end of the day, everyone, of course, wants that the benefits go to the harvester who's doing the hard work. But that's not our only category that needs to be incentivized. The main aspect is that the resource is being managed. That the community is included in managing the resource. It's not just the buying impact and paying more money to the harvester, but it's to create an environment where sustainable harvesting can happen and where the processing techniques are in a positive way. Of course, there are many ways on how incentives are being passed on to harvester groups, but also to institutions who are in the management position of the resource, that they are incentivized to do monitoring, to do training, to do the registration, and to manage the buying points and do quality control at the buying point, at the first step. So those things are in place.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything you want to complement to the other question, or is that covered? Yeah. Okay. Good. In this case, I would like to hand over the microphone to a participant over here. You have one. Okay, even better. I have to walk less. If it's not working, please just use mine. Yes, you can use this.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. My name is Funke Bolujoko from Nigeria. Please, this just for my education, what does the industry use devil's claws for? And why is it called devil's claw? Because claws. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I think that will be easy to answer, but an obvious question that must be answered. Who wants to answer? Yeah? Okay.
Thanks for the question, and a valid point for perhaps many others. So, as we said, the dried tubers is used for making a botanical extract. So we make an extract that is used then in food supplements, especially for joint health. So that's helping that. And why devil's claw? That's the form of the fruit. I don't know if you saw the first slide. We showed the fruit of the devil's claw vine, and that's really as a devil's claw, in fact.
Okay, thank you. As we don't have a lot of time, for any other questions and answers, please be short and crisp. Are there any questions? No?
Sorry.
If not, then I would have two questions. One to you.
Sorry, Friedrich.
Yes, okay.
On that picture, you see the seed capsule, and it has these thorns that can hook on also to animals, so which is really sore, and it's quite unique. Maybe, but you may be right that devil's claw is maybe not the right name for it, because it could create some negative perceptions about that product.
Okay, thank you very much. So another question to you on the role of Givaudan Foundation as you joined the project in a way later. How is that complementary to the role of the others, and how do you see that in other partnership setups?
Yeah. So this is the way we set up several other partnerships. So sometime, and it was the case here, we are contacted by Givaudan procurement or Naturex procurement to support what goes beyond procurement. And this is what we support is philanthropic initiatives that are bringing general utility to communities, either social or environmental. At the foundation, the Givaudan Foundation, we really make the choice to be closely linked to the business, which is not the case for many foundations. We on purpose are far away from their business, but we thought that if we really want to make an impact in communities, we should do it where we have a knowledge, where we have good connections. It has been said earlier on that what is important is local connections, and by allocated funds to those initiatives, we know the beneficiaries to which those benefits will go. And they are environmental, when they were talking about sustainable practices, ensuring the long-term availability of a revenue for the communities. So this is one. And the second one is social, with this initiative on daycare center, where we can ensure that communities, sometimes vulnerable people within the communities, here the mother with young children, can still make a revenue out of this activity without being constrained by their family obligation during the day.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope with that we could get a good image on why it is necessary to set up multi-actor partnerships to make this happen. But also it's possibly, especially on Vita Food, not so obvious that this is an issue for development cooperation and why BMZ is funding this project. A lot has been said already in the presentation by Mr. Azaiz about this motivation, but from a more wider angle, what are BMZ's aspirations to support, let's say, biodiversity-based value chains, and why is it so important to involve the private sector into the objectives of conservation?
Thank you for. Hello. Thank you for the question. Sorry, excuse me. Well, first of all, the private sector is a engine for job creation, right? So most people in the world, be it in Germany, but also in our partner countries, work in the private sector, and this is an engine for job creation, as I said. And in supporting the private sector, we support job creation, and we support, especially as we've seen today with the trainings you offer also to the people, the creation of good jobs, or an adding of value of good jobs, right? So this is something we really support in all kinds of sectors. And regarding biodiversity, you have to see that the preservation of biodiversity is something that cannot be done, let's say, independently of the human being, so to say. So in supporting, because you can't just have some biodiverse space and without the connection to the people who live there and work there, right? So by supporting these kinds of projects, we ensure that biodiverse systems are supported by the means of supporting the people who work in these systems, right? So we have we encourage preservation of biodiversity and rehabilitation of biodiversity systems by supporting the people working there and giving them the means via good jobs to support these systems.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Azaiz. So now we would like to come to the last wrap-up point and invite Hungileni Chitundu as a representative of the mission of Namibia to the United Nations to come on stage for the reception or for the handing over of the standard and to provide some closing remarks. Thank you very much.
So I'm not sure who I am receiving the standard from. Very excited. While Pierrot gets another gift for us, I just would like to say that us, as a permanent mission of Namibia, are very honored and excited to be here today to represent the government, to receive the GACP Plus standard for Devil's Claw in Namibia for fair and sustainable biotrade. For us, it's very important to acknowledge the efforts made by the private sector in improving the marketability of Devil's Claw. And we're also equally excited at the prospect that the GACP Plus standard will enable Namibia to proudly claim her position as the world leader in high quality and sustainably supplied Devil's Claw. From here on out, the Namibian government is looking forward to ensuring to the next step where the different stakeholders and led by the Ministry of Environment will ensure that the standard is compliant with our national efforts, as well as ensuring that Namibians will benefit from it and derive meaningful livelihoods from Devil's Claw, including the provisions on access and benefit sharing. And as we do this, of course, we look forward to further collaborations in this and other projects and processes for mutual benefit. So with those few words, I'd like to give our heartfelt thanks to our development partners, BMZ and GIZ of the German government, Dagmar Hansbein and the Namibian Network for Cosmetics Industry, Gero Dickmann, and the Namibian Devil's Claw Exporters Association, as well as Naturex and the Givaudan Foundation for all of their hard work on this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And it is with great pride that after the hard work we've done to develop this standard and aiming at a sustainable and even further growth and bright future of the Devil's Claw industry, we transfer the standard to you and hope that the Namibian government will take it over and will make sure that that is implemented, effective, and benefiting to the Namibian people.
Thank you.
And with that, I would like to close this session. Oh, sorry, there's something more, even more exciting. Okay.
Yes, we want to also to remember this special day when we come into your embassy, that you will have this on display. So thanks a lot for coming and joining us on this. Thank you.